Have you noticed the difference
Mhm.
between coaching women and coaching men? Is there any fundamental differences
Mm.
between the genders?
Yeah, yeah. So I have been looking for differences since I started coaching. And so, just because of like my own kind of
Right.
like analytical, intellectual brain too. So here's two ways that I think that they're very different. So and two ways that I think that they're really similar actually. So I started to notice that men and women are actually suffering from the same thing.
Wow.
But I started off thinking, I bet like what men are suffering from is this, and that, and what women is probably this, and that. It's not. Men and women are suffering from the same thing. And actually, the crux of that suffering is the internal disconnect from the self.
Wow.
And the internal disconnect from the self is essentially the same as the spiritual disconnect and the lack of identity that comes with that spiritual disconnect, meaning that I don't know who I am,
Mm.
that disconnect. When there is no spiritual grounding, meaning you don't know where you came from, which means you don't know why you're here, you don't know what your purpose is, right? Like that disconnect is a spiritual one.
Mm.
And that's one thing that I learned with coaching. And I realized that actually both men and women are suffering from that. And the outcome of that is very poor or low self worth and very poor self image,
Mm.
right? So, what their perception of their own value is very low, and the way that they see themselves is very poorly, right?
Wow.
Both men and women are suffering from that. That was a revelation and a surprise for me where I did not expect that at all. Like the day I realized that was like, oh, holy crap. you know, they're both the same. Not what I
Right.
expected. Where they're different, I think has to do with the way that they go about it, right? I think
Mm.
that men are a little bit more um, they're not as quick to go into coaching or counseling, you know but when
Mm.
they and women are quicker to like get in make the decision to get into coaching or counseling, right? But men, once they're in it, they actually seem to take action faster,
Mhm.
whereas women tend to get in it quicker, but they want to like mull it over, talk about these things, like they spend a lot of time like kind of spinning the same wheel.
Mhm.
Whereas men will come into coaching and be like, "Oh, wait, I got to change this, and this. Okay, what do I do?"
Wow. Yeah.
Done, right? Or like at least getting into meaningful action towards changing
Mhm.
it. Now, that's not every single man, but that's just like the two big differences that I notice is like in the action taking part
Facts.
and in the accountability and responsibility taking part. Men are
Facts.
quicker at that,
That's
you
interesting.
know.
A
They just
couple of
are.
podcasts ago, I was speaking to a young lady, and we were both raised in church, and coming from a similar background as far as apostolic or Pentecostal church, we
Mhm.
both noticed a trend of lack of masculine men in the black church, and we both kind of concluded that there seems to be a lack of pragmatic practical teaching, and there's more emotionalism, there's more dancing, and all those things being great. Again, I was raised in it, so I miss it, I
Mhm.
enjoy it, but the churches I gravitate to tend to give me very practical steps along with the dancing or along with the amazing music and all that. I'm starting to notice a pattern that I think especially as relates to colleges, middle schools, high schools, all these things, is that we're so quick to label people and say, "Oh, you have ADHD because you can't perform the same way this other individuals performing, or you're not
Yeah.
learning the way or retaining information the same way they are." Um, is there a different way that you approach men in your coaching practice versus approaching women due to a lot of these nuances that you've noticed?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I tend to be the type of coach that meets a person where they're at, and
Hmm.
then like I gently exert some degree of, you know, uh, force
Hmm.
to get them into some movement, right? Because here's the thing, like a lot of people bring on a coach because they think that they want to change,
Right.
something about their lives or something about themselves, which is really what you need to change, right? Like nothing's going to change in your life if you don't change yourself first.
Facts.
But some people think that the coach is going to change that thing,
Right,
or
right,
like
right.
just working with a coach is going to change that thing.
Hmm.
No. So a lot of times what will happen, and this will happen to coaches who are like kind of amateur, like they're new in their work and they're new to coaching. They don't really know that this pitfall can actually happen very easily. And so when I'm doing a consultation, this is really what I'm screening for. I'm screening for coachability and readiness.
Hmm.
Because here's the thing, doing personal self work is not easy. It can
Right.
be very hard and it can actually be very painful because it's going to force you to take accountability and personal responsibility. It's going to force you to look at the stuff in your own life where you've made mistakes and where you have actually been the person giving out all of the negativity that you're angry about other people giving you. Right. And so, from that context, one of the things that coaching does is it helps you see that. And when people see that, they tend to start backing away from the coaching experience if they're not ready, you know? And so that's part of the concern is that when people start to, if they're not ready, fully ready to take accountability and ownership in their lives and over themselves and everything that they create, when personal development starts to become just that, very personal, and starts to call them to make meaningful changes, including changing their mindset, they'll become less willing to do that.